Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the presentations from our second Girls on Ice Aotearoa expedition. My name is Lauren Vargo. I'm the director of Girls on Ice Aotearoa. What today's going to look like is our instructor team will give a short presentation, show you some photos and some videos of what our last 7 days on Mt Ruapehu looked like. And then the students, while we were up there, did research projects. And so there are 3 different groups for their research projects. Each one will come up and tell you briefly about that. So first I'll introduce Margaret Hyland, the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Research. Thank you, Margaret.
Tēnā koutou, kia ora koutou katoa. Ina manuhiri rarahi, matararahi e ngā tauira. Mena kai tōtoko no mai haere mai ki te herenga waka. No mai haere mai ki roto i te kopapa o te wā. He mihi aroha kia koutou katoa no mai haere mai. So welcome to everybody. Welcome to our students, to our supporters, to everybody who's here today to this afternoon's session where we're going to learn all about what happened in their time on ice. So the Girls on Ice Aotearoa program, this is the second expedition. I mean, I think this is such a terrific and important kaupapa. And there are a whole bunch of things that I really like about it. So the girls have been spending time on the ice and kind of exploring it and understanding it and doing research. Research is super important. I would say that, being DVC research, but and doing it through a combination of the science of art and out of the outdoor exploration. So that kind of combination of using your head and doing physical things, but also doing science and doing art. That's a combination that you don't often enough get. And we've seen recently how science and things that have a link with economic development have been prioritized over arts and social sciences. So it's lovely to see the combination of those two things in today's program. The other obviously important part of it too is the potential here if our participants decide that they really like science or that they really like research, that they will go on and follow on in careers in science. And as someone who went through engineering and was one of the first academics in women engineering at Auckland, I know what a lonely place it can be if there isn't the diversity around you. So this is my encouragement to you to think about science and think about your participation in it and what you can bring to it uniquely. These kind of programs take a lot of work, and we have an amazing team here, Lauren and her team, who've supported, who've led, who've really driven this program. So thank you for the work that you've done. And we've also had a number of generous supporters, in particular Beverly McCombs, the US Embassy, and Mountain Adventure. So really super important to have their financial and other support to make this program a reality. That's all from me. You're much more interested, as I am too, in what the girls will have to say, what kinds of questions they had and how they answered it, and a little glimpse of what the experience was like for them. So thank you all, and thank you to you in advance for your presentations. Looking forward to it. Kia ora.
Thank you so much, Margaret. So we'll get into it. A little bit of background about Girls on Ice. It was started in 1999 in the US. It's actually under the umbrella organization of Inspiring Girls Expeditions, but did start as Girls on Ice. It's expanded to Girls on Rock, Girls on Water, Girls in Icy Fjords. But all of the expeditions have the same aim, and that's increasing women and gender minorities in these fields that are mostly male dominated. So science, outdoor guiding, and even art. Since those first expeditions, it's also expanded to other countries. So Canada, Switzerland, Austria, and now New Zealand. Like I said, last year was our first expedition, and we were thrilled to be able to have this second one. One note about Inspiring Girls expeditions is that they're all tuition free, so totally cost free for the participants. And the aim is to inspire these girls to be confident, to show them that science is interesting, that they can go into a job in science, but maybe even if they don't want to, maybe you want to take a class in university in science, keep learning a little bit more. Same with art for all of those, and with outdoor exploration. The outdoors are accessible to you. We're aiming to address barriers in science, particularly in New Zealand. There's a 2016, I think, MB report that showed that the percentage of women in earth science is below kind of 30%. Another report a few years later asked kids what they wanted to do growing up. And in kind of the top 10 professions for boys was scientist and engineer, but neither of those were there for young girls. So that's what we're aiming to address here through this program.
Yeah, and the program has three
You have to
main.
speak into the
Oh, I have to speak into the
Yeah.
mic. That's all right. I'm a bit taller than you are.
For the Zoom.
So we have those three very important topics, which is science, art, and the outdoors. And it is very interesting to me when we start this expedition, how no one actually thinks that they are necessarily connected. And by day number 3 or 4, I feel you can't even separate them anymore. And it is very beautiful to see how we understand those connections. And yeah, so the science part is we work with what we can get, and that's not a lot of glaciers anymore on Ruapehu, but we do find some snowfields. So we take them up in high altitudes and we teach them about snow, how you can, measure snow physical properties, for example. We look at the volcanic rocks on Ruapehu. We had a guest lecturer this year, Eri. She also talked about the volcanic risk and how the volcano is monitored. So we're trying to show the different research topics that are available in an environment like Ruapehu. And then we obviously use mountaineering skills to get to our research areas, because it is a mountain, it is lots of rocks, it is heaps of climbing rocks, walking up rocks, and we have to navigate. It's quite challenging terrain at times. So we teach them how to read a map, how to how to keep track of the altitudes, how to properly gear up. We have photos about all of that. So that's the outdoor part of it. And then we weave in the art as well, because science is one thing and art is another option to capture what we can see and measure. And we don't, as I said, we don't separate that anymore. So those are the three topics. And now I would like to introduce the participants and where they come from. Do you want to give it a go?
Sure, I can give it a go. Obviously, a lot of you guys are the parents of the participants, so you guys know a lot of them already. But we had a wide spread from all over Aotearoa, New Zealand. We had some from Northland, several from Auckland, one from Palmy, a couple from Wellington area, another from Nelson, one from Christchurch, and one from Dunedin. So quite a wide spread all around New Zealand.
Yes.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Shorter, yeah. Kia ora koutou. I'm Gabby O'Connor, and I was tasked with being the arts and science communicator instructor. And then we have Yulia Martin, who's a snow scientist, and we have Lauren Bargo, who's a glaciologist, and we have Ashley, who is, I always forget.
Oceanographer.
Yeah, how to explain it. There's many aspects to all of our research, and we come from many places as well. So I'm from Melbourne, and Yulia's from Germany. Berlin, yeah. And we have both Ashley and Lauren are from the US, but New Zealand is home to all of us as well.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Lauren on the mountain. That's a very recent picture, Lauren is driving this project for sure. Lauren is a great friend and a great scientist. And then that's Ashley, who is amazing as well. And we got Ashley well, we send out, how do you say that? We needed a call for help. And Ashley she answered and fit into the team in a way that it was just amazing. Yeah, to have you there. And we would like to continue this journey with you. Then that's myself with the best snow shovel on the planet. And Gabby, who also was a new find this year because, we found Gabby just shortly before the expedition, actually. And again, it was the best fit we could have imagined. So that turned out really well. And then we have Mel, our guide, who's hopefully online. Mel, if you can hear me, we miss you. Mel Harris, she works with Hillary Outdoors. She's one of the, I think, best mountaineering guides I've ever worked with. And yeah, we have to leave her behind. So we drive up to Ruapehu, we meet her there at the car park, and then we have those 7 days with her, and then we have to leave her behind in the car park, and it's always a bit, but she does not like Wellington. She doesn't like cities that much. So, so that's Mel. Yeah. And then we have our behind the scenes team, which helps us throughout the year, because like the expedition is the biggest part of this, right? But the whole year we're building up to this, and there's a lot of admin work. There's a lot of work around getting the application started, sorting through the applicants, choosing the team actually, which is a really, really big chunk of time. And we take that very seriously. So Anna is a great help. And then we have Christina. She's in our finance team. I think you can say that. And then Dow and Barbara. So that's our headquarters team. So, and that's what we call them. And we also report back to them. So the communication we have when we are on the mountain, that's the people we communicate with. Right. And then I think we start the journey.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'll also shout out from that last slide, because Yulia mentioned how we kind of lead up to this the whole year, including selecting the team. We had a team of about 30 volunteers help us read applications this year. So even more behind the scenes team. So this is where we've spent our last week, Mt Ruapehu. Here's a shot as the drive up happened. So a nice clear day. And the hut. So we were very lucky to have a fabulous home for the last week from the Hutt Valley Tramping Club. This is their lodge on the mountain. From the Whakapapa car park, it's maybe a 30 to 45-minute walk up.
Depends on the backpack.
Depends on your backpack weight.
And the person.
If you're walking up with Mel versus not anyone but Mel. But yes, we loved having it. It was a wonderful base. Thanks to that tramping club for being happy for us to use it this past week.
Yes, and then there's the video. There we go.
And we had a blast. Our instructor team had a blast. We spent most of our days being out about and exploring the mountain, which is what most of these pictures will be of, but it's always really nice to get back to the hut, have a dry, warm place to have something to eat, have something to drink, relax.
Yeah, there we go.
Somewhere. This is the game Ninja. So whenever students might be a bit lower energy, not quite excited for a science lesson or an art lesson, a game of Ninja happens, and it often brings everyone's spirits up a bit. Yeah. We did all of our cooking in the hut. So here are some of the members of our team on pizza night. So we made some pizza dough, and everyone had the opportunity to build their own pizza. Thank you. Fabulous. Anyone want to take over?
Cool, I'll go. Yeah, so obviously part of the course was working on our outdoor skills and learning how to navigate our way around the mountain and make it from point A to point B really safely and together as a group, because we always wanted to stay together. So we have just a bunch of pictures of what some of the terrain looked like. Up here on the left, we've got one of the ridge lines close to the top of Mt Ruapehu. We also had several really misty days, so we were just up in the clouds, and the clouds would just kind of roll in on us, which gave it quite a cool ambiance up on the mountain. We also got to explore some caves, like this one on the left. Kind of looks like a dragon head where we walk into the mouth and then pop out on top of it. And then more of the girls smiling and having a great time. Here's just some more pictures of the landscape. The photo on the right is a rock arch seen from the side, so you can't actually see the arch, but we spent a good bit of time there that day doing some art lessons with Gabby.
And then, so this year we were a little bit, we were lucky with the weather because last year we had thunderstorm after thunderstorm rushing in at like 2 p.m. So we had like a really tight schedule. This year we had great weather. We had one day where it was we had rain forecast and we decided to explore some caves because our guide Mel, she's very experienced in doing that. That's her like other backyard, basically underground. And so we did a half-day trip to the Akupita caves. And that's us in the caves and we could use our helmets. And so Mel explained how those caves formed and what you can see. And Ashley had a lecture about the fossils you can find in the cave ceiling and in the walls, basically. And that's like, I think that's your favorite one. Like
Yeah.
the power shot. Yeah. So we had our head torches on because it was really dark in there. It was running water on the ground. It was really noisy. And then we found these guys, the glowworms, which are really, really beautiful. I mean, you probably all know them, but it was really magical to see them there because there were heaps of them. And yeah. That leads us to our peak physical day. I'm going to start the video real quick because that is what we did. This is the walk we did up to one of the tops of Ruapehu. And it took us, so when did we have you get up breakfast? I think I made you wake up at like 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Total
So-
walking time is 5 hours.
Yeah. So that was a big day.
But we had several breaks in there too.
That is true. But so we wanted to have a big window so that we have enough time to take it slow if needed and get all of the group members to the mountain safely in time. And we had a turnaround window, which we agreed on, which was 1 o'clock. And we made it. So we went all the way up to the central plateau. And then on the middle picture, you can see this ridge line, which you have to walk if you want to go to the crater lake. When you come up from the Whakapapa site of Ruapehu. And yeah, we did that. And on the way back, we did some science with some snowfields up there. So, and that's, yeah, Mel, sometimes she goes on little runs and checks out the route and we stay behind and have like a snake break. So like, yeah, anyway, so that's that. And come on, there we go. That's the Crater Lake. So we were really, 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 really lucky because we had some clouds rushing in, but when we were up there, best view ever. And we do have some group pictures as well, but we wanted to show you how the Crater Lake looks without, humans in front of it. And it was very beautiful because it was, we teach our students that it's not unsuccessful if you don't reach the summit of the mountain because mountaineering is not about that necessarily. But it was a very wholesome experience to stand up there, especially for Lauren and me, because that was our 3rd attempt. And we finally made it because we had bad weather the last 2 times. So we were really, really happy and we didn't have to push it. So that was all very natural and very organic and very safe. So that was great. And that's also us on the way back, traversing a snowfield with Mel in the front and all the participants. Yeah. And then that brings us to creative skill.
Okay, so woven throughout our time up at the hut and in the surrounds, I incorporated some creative projects, and it was as a way of developing really active observation skills, but also a way to kind of relax and calm ourselves as well. And so we had a few subjects that we focused on, and one was looking at the local flora of the area, which has led to some projects. And I also got quite obsessed with collecting bits of plastic, rubbish and other detritus. And we made some fun kind of little collages when we had a little break one day. And we also, people did a lot of free drawing as well. It kind of, it was interesting to see how like we had little structured moments with the drawing, but then when it came to free time, often every single person was there playing with pencils and paints and relaxing and laughing and talking about their days through art making. We also created some cyanotypes to using the sun or the UV that was kind of just at the end of the day. And we used different materials around the hut, and often a lot of the scraps, as well as plants and hand cut elements, as a way of exploring the environment and coming away with a lovely souvenir. But the image on the left is actually the very first exercise we did around the arch, and where we went through the process of kind of really slowly observing the tops of ridge lines and trying to kind of match the speed of our observation with the way that our pencil moved. And in kind of like art talk, it's called blind contour drawing. So we're trying not to look at our hand, but also there's all those lovely references in terms of landscape and geography of contours and exploring the contours as well as the plant life. And it helps really hone your observation skills, which really directly relates to scientific research as well. And we'll move over to science skills.
Yeah, I can get started. So one of the kind of parts of Girls on Ice for all three of these components is to sort of start building up and progress throughout our time on the mountain. So when Yulia told us about the peak physical day, that wasn't our first day. We had the first few days learning how to walk around safely with our boots and just getting comfortable walking with a pack, and had kind of bigger and bigger days, and then made it to our peak physical day. And so we do the same with science. So we have some science lessons towards the start of the week, which then lead up to their research projects. So for the science this year, the snow, it was a bad snow year this past year, which meant the snow was a lot higher, and actually took probably most of the day to get to. So we did have Yulia give a fabulous lesson on snow science right here. So here she is kind of talking about some of the ways we can observe snow, what we can learn from snow. And here's one of the students taking a look at the snow crystals through the magnifying glass. Everyone had a fun time having a go with some of the snow measurement tools. So here's a little tool you can use to measure snow density to learn about the snowpack. And then we don't have a slide for it, but I guess I'll just talk briefly. We also got to learn about volcanic risk. We had Ari from GNS join us for a day, which was fabulous for the students to learn about that. Gabby talked about her work being an artist who works a lot with scientists and kind of that intersection. Ashley mentioned that she talked about some of the fossils in the cave. I talked a little bit about glaciers. I think those are kind of.
We also had we had a call with a call with Scott Banks. So we were talking heaps about Antarctica. So Gabby has been to Antarctica, I've been to Antarctica, and we were just describing the science and art we do down there, and how this is basically also sometimes just the same. And how it is to live and work in Antarctica. And the call with Scott Base was with 3 women who worked there in supporting science events. And we had heaps of questions from our team, and we got beautiful answers. And I think we just wanted to show them that Antarctica is a thing. It doesn't have to be a dream. You can go down there as any role you want. And yeah, those were the main scientific topics I feel that we covered.
Yeah, so while it is hard to be Girls on Ice on Mt Ruapehu, we make the best of all the other kind of amazing different science topics that we can study. So in getting into the group projects, there was one group project that looked at the rocks on the mountain, one that looked at the plants on the mountain, and one that kind of dug a bit deeper into the caves that we explored. And so I don't want to give too much away because they're about to talk about them. I'll just wrap up our kind of instructor side of things with a massive thanks to our volunteers. Lots of private donors have made this happen. The same people Margaret mentioned, the amazing team that I get to work with. And so now is the fun part when we get to hear kind of about the research projects. Was there an order that they decided on?
Yes, we start with the cave team.
Caves first, fabulous.
Okay, so who we are. Hi, I'm Manaya Joseph. I'm from Palmerston North. Hi, I'm Luca and I'm from Bailey's Beach.
And I'm Emma, I'm from Auckland. So there was a video at the top, but that's okay. As you can see at the bottom, there's me with a helmet and a GoPro. There was a video that's not going to play, but it was pretty much just a little video of us going into the cave, and showing you what we saw. Maybe it will.
Yeah, that was the video.
No, okay.
Anyways, so for our activities and like thing we chose, we had to do a hypothesis and a question. So our hypothesis was we think that there are differences between the calcium deposits throughout the Akupata and the Pakuhino caves due to the variations in water levels and humidity.
So why are calcium deposits important in caves? Calcium deposits in the caves are important for many reasons. They give us an understanding of caves, particularly surrounding age, how it was formed, climate conditions of when it was formed, and the cave's general history. And the deposits are also just a beautiful part of caves that add diversity between each and every cave.
This map is the Akupata cave. All the different blue shapes and points are the points that we talk about throughout the next few slides. And each point, we compare them to each other depending on their, like if they were too dry, too wet, or like just right to create the calcium deposits. And this is the Pakuhino cave, which is a bit smaller, but was a lot wetter.
So how do calcium deposits form? Flowstone refers to the sheet of calcium deposits that form along cave walls. Stalactites are points that have been formed as water drips from the cave ceiling, and stalagmites are points that grow from the cave ground upwards from the calcium dripping down.
Here we sort of have some graphs which present our findings. So we have all the different symbols representing the different places in the caves we went to. On the bottom here, it shows sort of like the water levels, with 6 being the highest water level, like complete flooding, and 0 being like bone dry. We have on this one, we've studied the shapes of them. So there's flowstone, we saw some ridges and stalactites. The sun, moon, and pentagon are all from the Pakuhino cave, and all the rest are from the other cave. And so, as you can see, there was only one spot that really formed the stalactites, which was really interesting to find. A lot of it was flowstone, some had ridges, and yeah, that was really interesting. Here we looked at the texture of them. So there were some smooth ones near the bottom, similar areas with the dryness, they were quite smooth. And as they sort of got damper, they got more textured and more stuff. Debris. And then for the circle up there, it's halactites, which is sort of like debris that's been trapped under the calcium. It has like a really odd texture. I think it's in a couple of slides. You can sort of see it looks really, really cool. And now we also have color. So we sort of looked at the different colors of the calcium, with white obviously being the lightest and then going darker. We sort of noticed the same pattern with the damper it got, the darker the color got, which was really interesting to find out. Yeah. And then finally, we looked at the sizes, sort of like the length from the roof of the cave down for the ridges, stalactites, and any other interesting facts. So a lot of them sort of were very small. The ones near the bottom that are sit on the bottom, they were very flat against the wall, so they didn't have a lot of the ridges. Whereas as we got damper, especially into the super damp caves, they were really, really noticeable, like bumps and differences. Yeah. So now we're going to talk about the similarities and differences between each of the types of caves. And the two shapes you see at the top of each slide is the two areas that we compared them to. So the envelope you see, it's called the mail room because you have to go through a little slot in the cave called the letterbox. And the square was just a square we made up. The similarities, it was really dry and there was not much water. The shapes of the calcium was around like small coin sizes. The color was like a whitey kind of cream color, and the size was kind of between 1 by 1 and 8 by 8. The differences was the mail room had lots of cracks through like the ceiling and the area around it, and the box area didn't have any.
So now we are looking at the helictites. So it's this really like textured color. And this area where we see the helictites is usually pretty dry. It occasionally fills with water. The shape, it followed the shape of the rocks, and the size was about 3 to 9 centimeter gaps throughout, and the conditions were dry but fills with water occasionally.
And here we have an area with quite a steady flow of water throughout the year that remains sort of ankle deep. Most of what we noticed was the flowstone that sort of just carpeted the rocks. There was no like ridges or stalactites or anything. It was very, very light in color. Everything sort of flowed along like the cracks and stuff, and yeah, it was really cool. We sort of found two areas with that, and there was some differences between the entrance area, which is the star. It was the color of the calcium was very pure, very white, whereas as we got sort of deeper into the cave, it became a more yellow color. So this pentagon and the sun shape were both from a different cave, the one that filled up more with water, which was the Pukehinau cave. That was the second cave we went to. So the condition for this one was 24/7 flow, and it was usually about knee deep. The shapes was there was lots of ridges in both areas, but there wasn't many stalactites. Color was usually a really dark brown because it was so wet and watery like throughout the cave. And the differences, the sun area had small stalactites, but the pentagon had like none at all.
In this cave, this was a very moist area, and the flow of water was often disrupted by rocks. So the similarities that occurred between these caves was it was very moist. The shape, there was lots of ridges, as you can see, almost vein-like. The color was very dark brown, and the size was about 1 to 2 centimeters, and the depth ranged from 10 to 40 centimeters. The differences was the diamond shape had small specks of calcium on the ground, whereas the triangle had no specks at all.
And finally, this area here with the moon, that was also from the Pukehinau cave. This was at the entrance of the cave. It was very sort of, the water at the entrance was waist high. There was a very strong current, and we had a look around this area. We could not really find any of the calcium in this area, which was really interesting for our data.
So for the process, we used rulers to measure stalactite ridges and any calcium that required measurements. And using a journal sealed in a plastic bag, we recorded all the measurements using symbols to differentiate areas of the cave that we looked at. Gabby and Mel, the two adults that supervised us in our research, took the photos you see throughout the slides as well.
So just some more information about our caves that we went through. What did our data show? Our research shows that the calcium deposits change diversity depending on its environment. Based on our research, we found that specifically a moist environment that has water seeping through the cracks and the rocks is the best place for producing stalactites and the ridges along the rocks. We believe this is due to the fact that if the cave is too dry, the calcium cannot be formed into these shapes, therefore making the shapes crack away. Whereas if the cave is too wet, the calcium
will get swept away from the current. Of course, our research is only based around 2 caves that we went to, so our data can only be collected. So only as accurate to a certain level.
So our results from our findings were really interesting. We learned we were correct with our hypothesis because initially we thought there was a correlation between the calcium deposit size, shape, and its environment through the cave system. We were surprised that the cave environment with the most distinct calcium ridges and stalactites was one that was only partially wet, because originally we had thought it would be a cave with like a constant sort of water source, really lots of water.
So what did we learn about all of this? We learned many facts about calcium carbonate, but we also learned about other aspects of the cave. Glowworms and the spider family. The river sometimes gets to a point where it stills completely and fills up parts of the cave. We learned how to navigate the cave and the terrain inside it. Glowworms glow brighter when they feel vibrations so they can catch their prey. And we learned how the oils in our hands and fingers can damage the calcium deposits and restrict it from getting bigger. These caves also used to be submerged in the ocean, and we know this because of the fossilized shell and starfish embedded into the rocks. And the limestone that the cave is made of is approximately 26 to 34 million years old, but this is only an estimate. In conclusion, we had an amazing day out on Monday. We learned a lot about the cave systems and even more about calcium deposits we were researching. Thank you so much for listening.
Hi everyone, my name is Prisha. I'm 16 years old and I'm from Auckland.
I'm Imogen, I'm 15 and I'm from Christchurch.
I'm Elka, I'm 16 and I'm from here.
Today we're going to be talking about the plants that we researched at our time on Mt Ruapehu.
Our question up on the mountain was, how do plants and their adaptations change over altitude? This was within a specific species and all in general.
Our first hypothesis was that biodiversity lowers as the altitude increases.
And our second hypothesis was that plants at high altitudes would be shorter because we thought it would protect them from the snow more because they wouldn't be at risk of being crushed.
Our third hypothesis was that plants prefer to grow in places that are more sheltered from the elements.
We collected the data by starting at 1600 meters and then going on a transect, which is going 100 meters and then 100 meters and another 100 meters up to get information from a variety of different altitudes. At each altitude, we went 5 meters off the path and did a 1 by 1 sample of the area and of 1 by 1 meter sample. And then we would go another 2 meters and do another 1 by 1 sample to ensure we had a good idea of what the landscape was like.
Now it's time to meet the plant species.
Our first species was the woolly moss. It has like a fluffy texture on the top, so it can absorb all the water and prevent dehydration.
Our second species is called the snowberry. It has an interesting adaptation, which is that at lower altitudes, it's green, but then at high altitudes, it looks red. This is because at high altitudes, it produces a chemical called anthocyanin, and that makes it look red as just a side effect, but its true purpose is to help protect the plant from the cold. And interestingly, this isn't just an adaptation of the snowberry. Many plants have this exact same adaptation.
Species 3 is the alpine daisy. These daisies are white, which is unlike most flowers, which are usually colorful, because on the mountain, they don't normally have typical pollinators, which is why they don't need to rely on color to attract bugs.
Our fourth species is the black lichen. This usually forms on alpine rocks and is quite common on the mountain.
This fifth species is called Dracophyllum recurvium. We couldn't find a non-scientific name for it, so we're just going to have to deal with this. It looks, as you can see, it looks red in this picture, but it has the same adaptation as the plant I talked about before, where it is green at lower altitudes. Another interesting thing about this plant is that in the high altitudes, it grows larger horizontally, so it's more spread out, and it provides space for many other plants to grow around it, and it provides a habitat for them to protect them from the wind, which shows that it's a very important plant, because if it went extinct, there would be no habitat for many other plant species on the mountain.
The snow tussock is one of the many species which we observe to grow in and around places that would protect it from the harsh environment. As you can see in this photo, it's sort of using the woolly moss as like a shield.
Our seventh species is the gentian. We only observed this once in our survey of our data. Wasn't seen very often, quite rare. In the picture it is enlarged a little just for viewers' purpose.
This eighth species is the corpity. I think a cool thing about it, if you look closely at, especially at the bottom picture, is that the flower of it has within it small copies of itself and then more small copies of itself like a fractal, which is pretty cool. Another interesting thing about this is that in the first time we saw it, we could see the flower, but the leaves were hidden. And the second time we saw the leaves, but there was no flower attached. And so for ages, we just thought it was two separate plants. Till one day we saw it together. It was amazing.
Species 9 is the Brachylaudus bidwilli. It is a succulent-like plant which has its leaves have a sort of fuzzy texture which help it prevent evapotranspiration. And also its leaves are very close together, which allow the whole plant to be more sturdy and avoid wind damage.
Our last species, we actually don't know the name of. We came and searched up on the internet for very long and couldn't find the name. So it is just labeled species 10. This plant likes to shelter between rocks, as you can see. It's between the two rocks on the screen. And it is actually in prime position as this between rocks is where snow and ice melt gets to first. So that's very helpful. This is our graph on biodiversity. As you can see, we started at 1,620 metres and we found 7 plant species, whereas at 1,920 metres, only 2 plant species were present. This shows that overall the plant species decreased as the altitude increased.
This graph shows the relationship between the species height over altitude. As you can see, the graph, we measured each plant by using a ruler and going from the bottom to the top, and we found an average for each species per site. As you can see, the bar graph is bimodal, so it starts off high and it goes lower as altitude increases, but then the final 2 remaining spike up at the end.
Our more observant watchers and listeners may notice an interesting thing, which is that there's a negative correlation between the biodiversity of an area and the height of the species in the area. And we hypothesised that the cause for this could be that in areas with lots of species, they all have to compete with each other for resources, so they don't have the energy to grow tall, whereas in areas with just a few species, there's less competition, so they can grow higher. But that's merely our hypothesis.
Sorry. Our first hypothesis was that biodiversity decreases as altitude increases, and this has been proven correct. As we saw on the graph that I presented before, it lowers as altitude increases.
Our second hypothesis was that higher altitude plants would be shorter to protect them from the snow. However, this was completely wrong, and they actually got pretty tall.
And our third hypothesis was that plants tend to grow in areas that are shielded from the weather. And we noticed this as there are several species that happen to grow in places behind rocks and around other species of plants. And that also increased as the altitude went up too.
But this was just an observation.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Hey guys, we're the Ignorance Rockers for Girls on Ice 2025. We're gonna start with some introductions of all of us.
Hello, I'm Izzy. I'm 17 years old from Nelson, and this is my cat Tom.
Hi, I'm Rosie. I'm 15. I'm from Wellington, and I have a dog called Finn.
Hi, I'm Bella. I'm 16. I'm from Auckland, and this is one of my dogs, Millie.
Hi, I'm Leah. I'm 15 years old from Dunedin, and this is my cat Bella.
Our topic. Mt Ruapehu is an active stratovolcano located in Tongariro National Park. Over the last 7 days, we have journeyed across and up the mountain, exploring art and science in the outdoors.
Our topic surrounds the idea of variation of rocks at different altitudes in a volcanic environment such as Ruapehu. We wanted to determine if there is more variation in rocks such as color, size, density, texture, and environment close to the top of the volcano.
We chose this topic because we thought it was important to investigate the past and current volcanic activity so we can present the significance of the volcano's history.
Our hypothesis for this experiment was that we believe that there is more variation in rock types at a higher altitude.
For the past 2 days, we have been collecting data surrounding this topic. To achieve this, we took samples and notes from 6 1 meter by 1 meter sample sites, approximately every 50 meters of elevation. We started our sampling at 1,614 meters of elevation and ended our sampling at 1,855 meters of elevation. For each sample, we took notes on size, weight, color, density, and texture. We are presenting this data through photography, art, written speeches, and graphs.
So this is sample site 1, and you can see just the biggest picture. We have our 1 meter by 1 meter squared, and you can see that we took 3 rock samples from this site. So at the site we were at 1,614 meters, and it was 9:45 a.m. I'm not going to read out all the notes because there's quite a few and it'd get quite boring, but I'm just going to read out like the main ones. So there were 24 large grey/red rocks. The rest were cobbles and pebbles. There were not very many sharp edges, but the rocks themselves had rough textures, and the pebbles had more variety in colour than the cobbles and boulders, and there were colours like beige, orange, yellow, and white.
This is our second sample. We also 1 by 1 meter sample. We took 6 sample rocks from the site, and the coin is a scale for how big they are. So we started our elevation at 1,668 for this sample site, and we got there at 10:35. The rocks here were less red than the last site. The black and grey rocks had a kind of black moss on them, and there was less color variety, but a similar texture in the rocks to the last site. The surrounding area was mossy with a large amount of plants, and there was concrete and rusted metal in the surrounding area, showing a human impact on the environment. Yeah.
So this is our third sample site, and we took 6 rocks from this site. We were at an elevation of 1,717 meters, and we got here at 11:21 a.m. Yeah, I'm not going to read all the notes as well, but we found that there were a lot of rocks embedded in the ground here, and we also found that there were quite a large variety of the sizes of the pebbles. And also these rocks were quite jagged and had a lot of sharp edges.
This is sample site 4. That's our 1 meter by 1 meter square. Our elevation was 1,784 meters, and the time we got there was 2:19 p.m. We found that the colors of the rocks were more purple, yellow, and white. The rocks are now crumbly. They have white speckles, and the rocks still have a rough texture, and there is a lot of pumice.
So this is sample 5, and it was at 1,818 meters, and the time was 1:10 in this area, the rocks were very purpley and red, and it doesn't entirely show up in the photo, but yeah. In our sample area, there were no boulders, only cobbles and pebbles, but the surrounding areas had boulders. The pebbles were very pumicy, and the cobbles were firm, jagged, and rough.
So this was our 6th and last sample site, and we collected 10 rocks from this site, and we were at an elevation of 1,855 meters, and we got there at 1:42 p.m. So we noticed there are a lot of common colors like brown, beige, red, and purple up here. We also found that there was some coarse sand on the top with fine sand underneath, which we hadn't really seen much in the other sites. And we didn't find any pumice in our little sample square, unlike the other places that we had been to.
Here are some igneous rocks examples. And looking at the sample areas we took, we can see that we may have seen a lot of gabbro, scoria, andesite, and pumice type rocks, with the frequency increasing in higher altitudes.
We also showed our data through art. So we drew every single rock that we found in our samples to scale. And then we did some cyanotypes of all of our rocks. So the bottom, it goes site 1 up to site 6. And we did this to get a better understanding of the rocks that we had found and their different textures and colors. Yeah.
With recordable data such as weight and density, we have formed 2 graphs to describe the change in rocks at higher altitudes.
So this graph shows that as the altitude increases, the weight of the rock decreases. Since we use sample rocks of similar sizes, this implies that as the altitude grows, the density of the rock also decreases. This is shown through this table showing density of rocks in high altitudes. We recorded this through water displacement.
All this data suggests that our hypothesis that there is more variation in rock at high altitudes is accurate. As we got higher in altitude, we saw an increase in the quantity of igneous rock as well as larger, more jagged ones. The rocks decrease in density but increase in size as we increase in elevation. This implies that at a higher altitude, more air gets trapped in the rocks as it solidifies. Another interesting note is that the color of the rocks changed and became more pigmented the higher the altitude. All this data implies that volcanic activity impacts the environment.
Since there is more variation in higher altitudes, then this could mean that the lava is more viscous and doesn't flow as far. The magma that erupted out of Ruapehu is andesitic lava, which has a mid viscosity, which means that it is not super runny, but not overly thick, which matches the patterns in our data well.
This sort of information gives the surrounding community a general idea of what a future eruption could entail, and it'll also help historians understand the geological history of the mountain.
To support our data further, we have sought a geological map of Mt Ruapehu.
The map shows that in the areas we took our samples, there is andesite lava flows and poorly sorted andesite boulders, sand, and gravel.
This supports our data around rock types, but doesn't study deep into the specifics. We found a lot of andesite rock instead of flowing lava, which show a difference in data.
Our final discoveries conclude that on Mt Ruapehu, volcanic activity impacts the variation of rock types at different altitudes, proving our hypothesis correct.
Before we finish our presentation, we would just like to say a massive thank you to all the supporters of the program for making this trip possible, and an enormous thank you to all the instructors for making the program what it is. All of you instructors are so bright and fun, and we appreciate everything you have done to make it possible. It's been a truly great experience. Thank you.
Thanks to all the teams. And I forgot to say one massive thank you, and that's to all of the Chili Jams, the participant team name, for just being on board, being enthusiastic, and both you and all of your families for trusting us to kind of take you on this adventure this last week. So I think now we could have a little bit of time for questions, and then more time to kind of chat over some drinks and snacks. Do you think just questions over there? We can throw these around.
We can also
You want them
just,
to come?
yeah.
Yeah, all right. Chili Jams. So if anyone has questions about either the research projects that you heard about or just people's time on the mountain, we'll spend a few minutes on that. This is my mom with the first question.
Well, first I want to say congratulations to everybody on the Girls on Ice 2025 students and directors and everybody in the background who support people. Now, thank you for sharing your scientific discoveries, but I'm wondering, what personal discoveries did you make about yourself during this expedition?
So while people think about it, I'll just repeat the question for anyone on Zoom. The question is, what are some personal discoveries you made about yourself during the expedition? We did do a lot of self-reflection and journaling, so kind of up to you all and who wants to share and what you'd like to share.
I find that over my trip, I've discovered that it's so important to surround yourself with people that make you happy. And like all these people here have made me happy this trip. So it's very nice.
And I don't need my phone all the time.
I learned, I'll stand a bit back. I learned to think about mathematical unprovability, which is that there are certain mathematical statements that by definition, algorithms will never be able to interpret, but humans can understand pretty easily. And it's interesting because it proves that human thinking isn't purely algorithmic. And since I have human thinking, it's something I learned about myself. Thank you.
I learned something about people that you don't have to know everything about them to have like a deep connection with others.
I learned that I find the most peace for myself when I'm like outdoors in the environment and yeah.
I learned that sometimes awkwardness is worth it because it was very awkward at the start, but now I've made really good connections with really lovely people.
I learned that not only physically, but mentally, I can enjoy a lot more than I thought I could.
I learned that, yeah, I can do more than I think I can, and that it's like worth it to like push yourself out of your comfort zone.
Snap. 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 Fabulous. Any other questions? Kevin.
Yeah, wonderful talks. It's like, I was stunned to find out that there was starfish in a cave. What was the most interesting thing you found?
And this is a great question. Again, you can have a think because one team really looked in depth in the cave, but we all spent some time in the caves too. So for everyone on Zoom, something interesting that they found in the cave.
Well, personally, I did think the starfish was the coolest thing, because all the caves was like fully submerged in the ocean ages ago. So lots of different little fossils were like trapped in the cave. So we looked over that, and the one you saw earlier with the instructors slideshow was the power shell, which is probably the most distinct, which is also really cool. But I really like those. Yeah.
My favorite thing from the cave was probably the weta. When we sort of looked deeper, we also looked at the surroundings, what sort of flora and fauna were in the area. I found the weta really interesting, different from the ones I've seen in my backyard as like they're cave wetas. They looked more spidery and they just looked so cool.
I think the most interesting thing for me, apart from the starfish, was that we actually found a formation of calcium on the ceiling that looked like a human skeleton. And that was really interesting to look at.
Personally, I found it very interesting, the glowworms. I didn't know they made like cobweb things and they were like dangling from the ceiling. So that was pretty cool.
I also thought the glowworms were interesting because all my life I thought that when it's a bit light, you can see the strings hanging down. I thought each string was a glowworm. Turns out no, there's this really big, really ugly worm on the top that has all of them hanging down, and you can like boo them. Like I went boo, and one went like this. It was very impressive.
Are there any other questions from the audience? Yeah, over there.
Hi, I'm here from the American Embassy. Wonderful presentation that you guys have all given today. I'm curious, is there any particular area that you're going to study more in the future? over like the course of your studies in school or just on your own, based on your experiences?
So for the online audience, the question is basically if we inspired those girls to pursue a certain direction, if they take something home which they want to pursue. Is that right?
For me, I really just love the mountain environment. Before coming here, I've been really interested in engineering, and so one of my favorite parts of the trip was looking at the snow, and I was thinking maybe I could incorporate that into my career if I somehow find a way to do that. Yeah.
For me, I'm not too interested to study, like geology or anything like that, but I do plan on becoming a vet. So I think that while gaining skills in biology and everything, I've also learned to strengthen my mind as well, and that I've learned that I can actually like reach those goals if I put my mind to it.
Personally, I have no clue what I want to do after high school, but it was really cool meeting the amazing instructors and learning about all the different things they do with science, and it's really interesting to know that they all actually completely love their jobs. And yeah, it was really inspiring because Ashley, she's a marine photographer, is that correct? Yeah. Scientist, that too, yeah. And I've always really liked marine biology, so it was really cool talking to her about all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
For me, before all this, I never really cared for like being outside and like plants and all that. Like it was more of a thing that I had to do and to like do something else. But in this whole experience, I realized that like being outside is a really important thing, and like actually feeling connected with the world around you is like it's crazy. Yeah.
Before I came here, I also had no idea what I want to do after high school. I've always enjoyed science and art and the outdoors. One of the reasons I came, but yeah, seeing all these instructors that love their jobs, it showed me how many cool jobs there are out there and have science included in them.
For me, before I came, I wasn't entirely sure what type of science I wanted to go into. I was very interested in kind of all of it. But hearing specifically Yulia and Lauren talk about snow and glaciers was really interesting to me. So just hearing how passionate they are about it kind of led me towards that way.
So this could be a nice time to wrap up. We'll give anyone on Zoom. Yes, so we've got a comment on Zoom. I enjoyed the use of humor in your presentation, rock group. I'm wondering how much you all laughed during your trip and how important this was for balance as you went through various challenges. So sounds like a nice question to end on, if anyone has any comments on just kind of all the laughter and fun that we had balancing kind of the science and maybe more serious or challenging parts.
I thought it was quite funny when I woke up on the first day on the mountain hearing the Macarena song at 7:30 in the morning, because it's a two-story hut, so we could hear all the stomping from the instructors as they danced to the Macarena song.
And it's a really good sound system.
Yeah, so it was quite loud. But yeah, it was quite funny. The 10 of us girls all quite grumpy that we had to wake up early, and just hearing the happiness of all the instructors very early. Yeah.
It's not just the Macarena either. The instructors are by far the loudest people in this group. We're just in the evenings, we'd be getting ready for bed, or maybe just before bed, playing a card game, and then we'd hear this laughter. It's like there were 15 of them that were louder than all of us combined. And I thought, well, they must be really happy because it's the first day, but it just kept happening. I've never met anyone like it.
To help answer the question, it was very important for the challenges, as everyone was always happy. It gave everyone a reason to be happy.
Yeah, I found it really funny how Mel, one of the instructors, every morning she's so happy and excited. She'd knock on our door with a fancy little knock, and she'd be like, "Wake up, it's morning!" And we're all just oh.
Yeah, we definitely did laugh a lot, and I felt like when you were kind of in like a state of just feeling a bit down and like you can't do something, like the people who always try to make you laugh, and it's like really helpful and really powerful.
I think it really helped our team bond how much we laughed. Like it was pretty constant, and I'm quite clumsy, so it was all the time.
I think it was quite good how we were all quite close. And so in the mornings when one of us was a bit grumpy and another was happy, then we'd, share the happy vibes and then we'd all be happy.
I feel like putting a bunch of people with the same passions together also means a bunch of people with the same humor. So like having everyone like be able to just bounce off of each other every single day was like a really good motivation to keep going, because sometimes it felt like a really long week, but we ended up okay.
Fabulous. That sounds like a nice spot to end on. Thank you all for joining our presentations. Thank you to everyone on Zoom.